Hello, good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us throughout the world. I'm Shahnaz Kimas. I'm one of the organizers for this session with Constanza Pachulo, my partner in crime for this session and the starter kit. So today, we will be applying a critical feminist lens to the COVID-19 regulations from a macroeconomic perspective. And this will be a preview of our Euro-Asia Pacific's Gender Equality and Macroeconomic Starter Kit. So what we'll do before we begin, let me explain. We'll be using this Google slide I'm putting into the chat again right now. We'll use this Google slide as a common whiteboard, if you will, that will kind of complete together. So you see a skeleton of the Google slide right now, but it will only be complete after our session today with your inputs. So please go on to the Google slide if you're on a tablet or if you are on a laptop. If you're on a phone, you're welcome to use the chat function for us to put the information you want to include in the Google slide ourselves. You can write in the chat and we can put it in the Google slide. This is one of the methodologies that we try to use to make our sessions that are on the virtual realm more participatory and more inclusive, considering the limitations of the virtual realm. It would have been wonderful to be with all of you on a physical space, but we're kind of adapting, let's say. Is everyone able to hear me? I believe there's no sound for a participant, but okay, great. I'm glad that we can be heard. So I'll start with why it's important to work on macroeconomics. And this is actually a quote from Euro-Asia Pacific, which I find very relevant in all times and frames. Macroeconomic and development policies that are not accountable to the rights of people and the needs of planet are a threat to human rights. And it is us as activists, as civil society, volunteers, workers, decision makers, academics, researchers, to make sure that these policies are accountable to the rights of the people and the needs of the planet. And that's why we are having this session, to make sure, to hope that more of us can join in this accountability session. So I'm so happy to see that we already have someone who has utilized our introductory slides. So we are currently 50 participants. It's incredible the interest you've shown towards the session. Thank you so, so much. It's such a wonderful feeling to be with all of you. But unfortunately, this means that we will not be able to do one-to-one introductions, although we would have loved to hear your voices in introductions as well. So what we're going to do instead, so that this session can be also a network building activity that we can be together, is to do introductions in a written way. If I may ask Constanza to demonstrate for us how we do this. So we take one of the Post-its to the side, and then we write our name, our organization, country, and if you want, your contact information. Whatever you put, please make sure that you feel comfortable and you feel safe to put whatever information you want to be there. We can share this Google Slides with all of you as well afterwards, so you can have the contact of all the people who were in this session today. Oh, Josephine, I'm really sorry. I don't know why you might not be able to hear. Maybe you might want to, while we're doing the introductions, maybe you might want to reconnect again. everyone that goes into the Google Doc does have editing access. So let me type the Google Doc address here, and you are welcome to use the other slides. If there's no space left in the first slide, please feel free to go to the next slides to put your names and introductions. You can go to, let me show here, you can go to these post-its and then just start typing. It will put in your information. Just like that. It's open for all your edits, so it shouldn't create a problem for any of you to be able to write in. So let's see, we have participants from India, from Nepal, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia, Burma. This is so exciting. France, Singapore, Hong Kong, Cambodia, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see all of you here. And it's very exciting for us all that we'll do this exercise together, that we'll be able to show a sneak peek of our starter kit to all of you today. Thank you, Constanza. If you can write, we can add it to the Google chat. If you write the information to the Google chat, we'll also be happy to put your information on the post-its. We have colleagues from Netherlands and Mexico, from Bahamas. It's so wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you. So while you, Macau, India, these as well, and then Finland, I see. Micronesia, thank you. India. Cape Town, South Africa. So many thanks for putting in your introductions. As said once again, I won't tire from saying this. It's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you so much for making the time with us today. And you can continue writing your contact information, but if it will be okay, I'd like to now give the floor to Constanza so she can talk to us a little about why Eurasia Pacific decided to work on the issue of gender equality and macroeconomics, especially in this strategic time zone. Constanza?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just turning on my video. So lovely to be here with you all. Thank you, Shahanas, for leading us in these exercises. My name is Constanza Pauchulo, and I am a program officer with International Women's Rights Action Watch Asia Pacific, based in Malaysia. And as I said, very happy to be acting as Shahanas' partner in crime with this starter kit. And hopefully we can continue in that role going forward. But yeah, so I'm just jumping in to give a little bit of background on our work in gender equality and macroeconomics and our thinking around the starter kit before handing it back to Sehenes to lead us through some exercises. So our work on gender equality and macroeconomics falls under a broader program called Transforming Economics and Development Through a Feminist Approach, which was launched at the beginning of this year and builds on and incorporates our earlier work in the areas of women's economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as business and women's human rights, and is closely related to our ongoing program on women in work. And we've listed in the slide two of our broad objectives in this area, and I'll just be talking about them in relation to the starter kit, which we hope will contribute to the many ongoing activities within feminist and social justice movements to strengthen capacity and collective action within civil society to hold various actors to account for the impact of macroeconomic policies on gender equality. Something that I think we've all been seeing in stark relief over the last few months or the majority of the year because of the pandemic, but which has existed for decades or as long as macroeconomics has existed. So we're really excited to be contributing to that work that's ongoing among many feminists, particularly within the Global South. And through this work of capacity building and strengthening collective action, our aim is that the starter kit will also help increase diverse women's voices in macroeconomic policy decision-making and contribute to a shift in international norms towards macroeconomic policies that enable gender equality and protect women's human rights by meeting this international standard of non-discrimination, redressing the historical and structural socioeconomic disadvantages faced by women, and contributing to the long-term transformation of the institutions and structures that reinforce and reproduce unequal power relations within and between countries. So those are the kinds of economic policies that we're aiming towards and the framework that we use to kind of measure current approaches to macroeconomics as well and critique their impact on gender equality. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that the starter kit achieves this is by challenging the idea of macroeconomic policies as solely in the domain of so-called technical experts and exploring the ways in which macroeconomic policies are entrenched in all aspects of our lives and connected to all areas of women's rights advocacy. And we'll do that by demystifying some of the language, approaches, and institutions that are central to this kind of policymaking, and also hoping to encourage or facilitate some cross-movement building and knowledge sharing by aiming activists and researchers in different areas who may not different areas of economic rights who may not incorporate gender analysis and a feminist perspective into their work to have the tools to do so, and vice versa with women's rights groups who may not be thinking about or incorporating macroeconomic policies or the connection of their work to those kind of policies into their current advocacy to provide a starter kit for thinking about how that may happen and maybe making connections with other groups that can support those kinds of linkages. So that's it for me, Sehenes. Happy to hand it over to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Constanza. It was great. Thank you for starting us on this. So we just wanted to, because this is a sneak peek, we thought it made sense to talk about the timeline. We worked on this a little. So we've actually, this is a full year cycle. in all honesty, we started with a resource group meeting of feminist academic and activists, which wasn't just for the starter kit. It was a broader meeting for Eurasia Pacific's work on gender equality and macroeconomics. But all the discussions there have actually laid the foundation for the discussions and perspectives that are within the starter kit. We have developed a resource, as I've said, together with Constanza, and we had a focus group from diverse activists and academics, both from women's rights organizations, but also economic rights organizations, feminist economics, economists, sorry. And we were very lucky that all of them have actually spared their time and expertise for providing feedback on the starter kit. And we just want to say our thanks once again to all of them for doing so, for giving us their time and expertise. We also had a focus group discussion on Zoom as well on the starter kit to think about together collectively. And we have finalized the resource, and we're having the sneak peek session now at the Global South Women's Forum. So what does this entail? So what would a starter kit for feminist analysis into macroeconomics look like? This is basically our table of contents, but it does give an idea of what we include within. So it's just as Constanza explained a moment ago, why we decided to work on macroeconomics and gender equality, how to use this starter kit, what's macroeconomics, how is macroeconomics relevant to women's human rights, which includes feminist criticisms as well as feminist alternatives to conventional macroeconomic policies. Advocacy pressure points for gender equality and macroeconomics. That includes UN human rights mechanisms such as the CEDAW mechanism or the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, as well as Agenda 2030 and the Financing for Development Scheme. And so other as well as such as the IFI. So sorry, I believe someone's unmuted, which I'm not able to see. If you could mute yourself right now, that would be great. We'll have great. Thank you. So the last session, the last part of our starter kit is advocacy pressure points for gender equality and macroeconomics. That includes UN human rights mechanisms, such as CEDAW and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Agenda 2030 and the Financing for Development Scheme, as well as international financial institutions and alternative areas such as the World Trade Organization or G20 or G7 meetings, and how some of the points, entry points that civil society organizations can access within these mechanisms and meetings to do advocacy on the intersections of gender equality and macroeconomics. We also have two annexes, one on the basic concepts of macroeconomics, because as you know, macroeconomics is always presented to us as, this up in the air concept with lots of terminology, lots of numbers, making us feel and believe that it is actually not within our understanding or within our expertise or scope to understand and interfere with macroeconomics, which can be interpreted as a very deliberate strategy, but which is one that we are hoping to break through here with the starter kit. And many feminist economists and activists have also aimed to do that before. We're just trying to add on to it a little. But so these basic concepts and the main institutions, explanations into those will be helpful for some of us here, for some of us, and especially also to give a perspective also into economic justice colleagues into its interrelations with gender equality. So this is the basic table of contents we have. And to understand it a little bit better, I'm sorry, I realized that the slide has moved. To understand it a bit better, we are looking into one of the sections of the toolkit. So this will give to starter kit. This will give us an understanding of how, in which way we are hoping the starter kit will be used. So for the how is macroeconomics relevant to women's human rights section, we have feminist criticisms of conventional macroeconomic policies. For example, the fact that macroeconomy is actually not gender neutral as it claims to be. The fact that unpaid care work, whether domestic or ecological, is not included in the macroeconomic calculations and is not compensated. Decision-making are not accessible to women, and they're also not transparent. They're just imposed upon us when actually they have such important repercussions of our lives. And of course, privatization and corporate capture, and the woman's work being seen as dispensable. These are really not, exclusive at all. There are a lot of other criticisms out there. We weren't able to collect all of them, of course, but these are just starting points for us to start thinking about the intersections of macroeconomic policies with the realities we live as women and girl children on our daily lives. And again, not an exclusive list, but some feminist alternatives to conventional macroeconomic policies, such as the issue of intersectionality and interlinkages, gender responsive budgeting, making sure the voices from the global south are amplified and heard in the mostly global north dominated spaces. A purple economy, a concept developed by Professor İpek Karacan, one of the also advisory board members of IWRAW Asia Pacific, which brings a different understanding, a complementary understanding to the notion of green economy, bringing in the voices of gender equality. And a very recent a Just Green and Feminist 2019 Response and Recovery call by our activist friends in the global north. The author of the purple economy idea is Professor İpek Karacan. She is a feminist economist from Turkey that has worked on this idea in collaboration with other feminist economists as well. All our sessions end with exercises and further resources section. So this, we hope that this gives you the idea that this starter kit is actually a self-learning tool. What we're hoping will be a self-learning tool for all of us to continue thinking. The exercises we have, my apologies, the exercises we have are meant to kind of invigorate ideas, questions, to have this feminist analysis to the issues that we face in our daily lives or in our advocacy work. And the further resources are for all of you who want to delve into some of the issues even deeper. The further resources, of course, have resources that have been produced by international organizations, also IFIs, but especially those resources that are coming from our feminist activist colleagues from the global south that have in so many ways diversified and strengthened the discussion we have on macroeconomics and gender equality. So without further ado, we will be collectively doing one of the exercises from the starter kit together here today. For this, we've looked into, we have made up basically two hypothetical countries, A country and B state. There are two very hypothetical countries, but so all of the countries have put out measures against COVID-19 pandemic, against the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of these policies were very helpful, some of them were ineffective, but all of them, regardless, had some effects in our daily lives and how we are still going through this pandemic. So while the A country and B state, I'm sorry for not being too imaginative with the names here, but these two countries, while they're hypothetical, the policies they've implemented, as you can see on these post-its, are actually real policies from different countries throughout the world. And all of those have actually been taken from the Feminist Response to COVID-19 website, which is a collective of feminist movements from throughout the world that has a resource based database that you can go and look into with different countries, different languages, different areas of impact. So you're welcome to look at that after the session if you want to. They also have an advocacy toolkit launched this Thursday, because I just saw Diana online who have developed that toolkit. So that's another exciting event upcoming. But so what we're going to do, we'll do one together, if that's okay with all of you. And then we'll go into breakout groups so you can have more in-depth discussions about how these policies from A country and B state actually affect the lives of women and girls in those countries. And if you want to think about extraterritorial obligations, you're welcome to think about it like that, how it affects the women and girls globally as well. Although these are quite national policies, but that's also something that can be thought of when looking into macroeconomic policies in general. We do have some guiding questions here for you. Again, this is by no means an exclusive question list. This is just to get us thinking. One thing I think I want to emphasize that the starter kit had in its mind from the very beginning is that what we understand as feminist economics, what we understand as gender equality, what we understand as feminist activism is an evolving and progressing issue. So whatever is here can always be added on, and it's our richness that we always continue to keep these discussions and add on to them throughout the years and throughout geographies and spaces and languages. So please do not think that these are the only questions you should have in mind. These are just to get you started during our discussions. So for example, who or what group of society does this policy benefit? What would be the effects of this policy on the lives of women and girls? What would be its effects on marginalized groups? And would it result in an intersectional discrimination for women and girls in that marginalized group? Would this policy result in a hindrance for women and girls to use one or more of their human rights? What can be the short-term effects, immediate effects on the lives of women and girls for labor force participation, for poverty reduction, for attendance to education? What might be the longer lasting effects of this policy? So these are some of the questions just to keep in mind. And I would like to propose that we do one of these all together, so we can get to the rhythm of it, and then we'll be breaking up into breakout groups. So I want to propose, let's take urgent public services are provided free of charge. So urgent public services can be water, electricity, healthcare services. Any urgent public services during COVID-19 pandemic are provided free of charge by the state. First of all, let's start with the questions, but we don't have to go step by step. Who do you think would benefit from such regulation in a country? And I open the floor for your comments and contributions. You can either write in the chat or raise your hand. Who would benefit? What effect would this have on the lives of women and girls? Chevron wrote, it depends. Are the governments paying for the expenses from central banks? That's a great question. Chevron, I was wondering, would you want to elaborate on your point a little bit more?
Hello.
Hello.
So my question was, if we had urgent public services, such as, if we say, water and electricity, just as an example, depending on the area you're in, those are provided by private businesses. And my fear is that if we advocated a policy where homes were given free reign, that the private, I feel like it would have to be capped, because if central governments were paying for it, either through an independent bank or through the government coffers, I am certain that there would be price hikes, and there could be, some of the money could be given so that people could buy back stocks. I know stuff like this happened in New Zealand, I think. So that would be my fear, because after COVID has happened, when inevitably people start asking for austerity measures, that actually then has a long-term impact on the services that are provided, that women and families use in countries.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. This is actually a great example of how multi-layered our analysis and responses should be. But for the sake of our exercise, we can assume that these have been publicly provided by the state, and the state decides to do it free of charge for this moment. But that's an incredibly important point you put together. Please, during your discussions in the breakout groups, do make these discussions, and we will actually, my apologies, let me put it like this so you can see. During the breakout sessions, when you have analysis like these, you have a brainstorming space that you can go ahead and write these type of nuances, these type of conditionalities, to make sure that we don't overlook them. So if these urgent public services are provided by the state and still made free of charge to all the people, I see in the chat that it's Saida says underprivileged, marginalized groups would benefit from it. So would this belong to our purpose standard, do you think? Would this be a good policy for a feminist utopian country to implement for a pandemic measure, during a pandemic measure, or any other emergency for that matter? Diana agrees that this would be a purpose standard. So what we will do is, we'll take this post-it and put it into our purpose standard. Yes, unfortunately, the situation has led many to lose their jobs, being forced out of their homes, in stress and debt. So being able to use it will be very useful. I see Nedi has her hands up.
Okay, I'm Neri Palcon from Macau. I'm a domestic worker here. For us, about these free services that is told about the urgent public services, like the utility bills, here in Macau, most of so not only the locals benefited on this thing that the government gave us, we also the migrant domestic workers also have benefited from this, because the government gave us the 3 months free subsidy for the utility bills. So it's a great thing that the government of Macau give this privilege not only to the local people, also to the migrant workers. Yeah, that's all I can share.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nedi. That's actually a great input. And it's actually a great reminder that we will be able to, that this is a great example. And thank you so much for bringing. I also wanted to suggest that you can write down in your breakout groups when you are discussing, you can write down such policies here in white post-its during the discussion, so you can add on to these policies, what would be such beneficial policies be? So you would then be able to say 3 months of bills free of charge for migrant domestic workers, right? So you could add this in our purple standard as well. And after our breakout groups, we will come together and you'll be able to tell all of us about these purple standards that you have witnessed or you have imagined for your countries. If you want to do, just a note, if you want to make another edition, you can just copy and paste this post-it and then write on it again. So you can add another purple standard like this. Is it kind of clear for everyone what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes of our time? So we'll imagine a purple standard country that has all the most wonderful, all the right macroeconomic regulations to mitigate the effects of COVID. So how we're going to break out into our breakout groups is that I would kindly ask you, oh, I'm sorry, there's another hand up from Galaxy J4. Can I give the floor to you first? Okay, I think that's done. So what I'm going to do, what we're going to do now is to, if all of you could go to the participants section of the Zoom, that should be on the bottom of your screens. You should see 51 or 50 participants right now. If you click there, you'll see your name on the top of the participant list. Unfortunately, I can't show that to you because that doesn't screen. But there you see, when you come to on top of your name, there's a button called More. So you can click on it and it tells you to rename. So I'm going to rename myself as Shehnaz Qimaz English because I prefer to go to the English breakout group. We'll have two breakout groups in English and one breakout group in Arabic, because of our Arabic translation. So our colleagues can, Arabic speaking colleagues can freely and easily discuss there. And while you do that, while you add English or Arabic next to your names, I just want to show once again that each of the breakout groups will have one graphic like this that you can play around with and create your purple standard, add any policies that you think should be in the purple standard but is not here already. And you also have a brainstorming space for nuances, just like the one Siobhan told us, that we need to make sure that is not forgotten. Or, just to put your ideas or just to put anything that doesn't fit into this graphic. So please use the brainstorming space freely. And then after half an hour, in about 25 to 30 minutes, we'll come back to the main group and ask one of you from each breakout group to share what you've discussed and why you put those things in the purple standard, under what conditionalities, for about 2 to 3 minutes, not very long. But so we can all learn from the different perspectives and different principles you're applying when you're doing a feminist analysis to these policies. The guiding questions are here. You can see them on your slide whenever you need to refer to them. But as a reminder, again, this is just to get you started. You can have your own questions, and if you think you have a very important question that we shouldn't forget, you are welcome to write it in the brainstorming space for all of us. Siada, I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to ask, when we think of the purple standard, are we supposed to be thinking about the scenario of our countries? What would be ideal at where we are based at?
It could be, but then it would be great if you can write a note like that. You all are in the breakout groups, you all will be from different countries. So it might be a good idea to come to a common understanding, you know, a regional or global standard, if you will. But you are welcome to write in the white post-its. This would be a more specific purple standard for my country that wouldn't apply to anywhere else in the world. Of course. Thank you for asking that so I could clarify. Thank you. Wonderful. Welcome back to the main group. We have very short time, and I've realized that not much of the purple standards are, well, there's some here, but I've heard very important lively discussions in the breakout rooms. So could I ask very quickly just a 1-minute recap of the discussions in groups from group 1, group 2, and group 3?
Sure, I'm happy to. So we looked at the policy that you left us with. 1 day a week has been declared a public holiday to keep people away from the roads and sanitizing of public transport. And we noted the women's disproportionate representation in the cleaning sector, and that this would impact their ability to get to work on those days. But also there was a very early sense that, you know, it really depends on which context we're referring to and how the policy is implemented. It's not practicable to have the entire day blocked off just to achieve this particular goal, and that sanitation of public transport could be achieved in other ways. We also talked about how this would affect rest days for migrant workers or domestic workers in particular, who might have Sunday as their potential day of rest, opening up possibilities for labor exploitation. It would also add to the care burden of women, since childcare and other facilities would be closed. It would also affect daily waged and hourly paid workers. And so overall, we felt that, you know, there were 3 things that were key to developing more effective policy for the purple economy. And that would be to have a context-specific policy response, which is responsive to the current situation for everybody, and that COVID was just a short-term measure, and such policies would have unduly long-term impacts on particular groups, especially those that are already marginalized, such as the women and girls, but also people who are in situations of poverty, so having intersectional impacts, and that we needed a long-term strategy or measure to develop more sustainable approaches to weather multiple crises, not just COVID. And so this has implications for how we collect resources, redistribute them, and share them back to build sustainable communities.
Thank you so much. That has been great. Can I ask the breakout group 2?
Yes, hello.
Hello, Siobhan, thank you.
Hello. Let me just bring up it was on ours. Okay. So we initially discussed that employment benefits were extended in duration. And Wendy from South Africa discussed the context in South Africa. She's in Cape Town, saying that for those who were able to receive it, it was incredibly beneficial, helped support families across the region in an incredibly diverse area. And then let me just share my screen if I can. No. And that we should try and ensure that those who aren't residents are included. So those who are migrant workers or asylum seekers or people who are not included under the traditional government apparatus of who's given state support, and that can be extended from unemployment benefits to the benefits of the use of healthcare. But running through that was the strategy of ensuring that the way money was distributed is pivoted toward the interest of women and girls. So ensuring that thematically a part of the analysis, including for non-South people that live in South Africa that aren't recognized residents are included. And then we discussed briefly an amnesty, saying that you could allow people who are migrant workers a short amount of time to sign a form or something. We couldn't really discuss this. There were some people agreeing and disagreeing, but we couldn't come to a conclusion in this. And then some people discussed some responses from their countries and the nations that they represent, which include the Philippines, where Alpha noted that there hasn't been it's been a gender blind approach. So there hasn't been any form of gender analysis in the way that they've responded to COVID-19. And there's been benefits in the form of a uniform package for all families that doesn't pay attention to dependence, the roles, multiple roles of women within those families, the size. So that's obviously something that could be factored into the way that benefits are distributed. And then David from Papua New Guinea said that the macroeconomic responses from Papua New Guinea did include half of the allocated money being purely given to women's projects. So that's an example of best practice.
Great, thank you, Siobhan. Very sorry, we're right at our time. That's why I'm rushing a little, but I feel relieved knowing that all your points are on the Google Docs, Google Slides, so we can all see it. Thank you so much for these discussions. Can we go to group 3?
Yes, we can, and I will be as quick as I possibly can. We started with the question about tax and whether basic goods and services with no VAT would be beneficial. And we agreed that because we felt that the value-added tax is very much a regressive tax that is negatively impacts on poor people. But we also recognize that it has to be in combination with a more kind of way of also targeting the rich and corporates to actually provide, increase the tax on rich people and on corporations, because that would then actually, otherwise to bring in the revenue that would need to provide the services for poor people and poor women in particular. We had a very quick discussion on the one day of the week that has been declared a public holiday policy, and felt that if that needed to be nuanced in some way, because otherwise it would impact on informal sector workers, and I think similar to what Group 2 said. And then I'm not going into we had some more detailed conversations about all of these things, but I want to say that we also added a few other policies that should go into the purpose state, because we felt that there needed to be targeted policies on gender-based violence, that there should be ways in creating employment of jobs through public works with sort of community-led focus, and not infrastructure, capital-led infrastructure projects, and of course more public sanitation for marginalized communities. Yeah, there's a lot more, but I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing, and also all the thought process that went into this. This activity was everything I hoped for. Thank you so much, because I was counting on our activist and feminist colleagues to come up with all these nuances that actually affect our lives so severely. So to make us also understand that, this starter kit we've developed is just a starter kit. There are many nuances that are group specific, that are country specific, that should be kept in mind. And I think from listening to all of you in different groups, I was jumping from breakout group to breakout group, you all brought in a different perspective, a different need of analysis specific to the constituency you're working with, specific to the realities of your own lives. And these are the things that actually make everything, the feminist analysis into macroeconomics, more real, bringing macroeconomy from that domain of numbers and terminologies to our real lives, and also making sure that we can hold governments, international financial institutions, and other policymakers accountable for macroeconomic policies that will serve us as people, and that will serve the women and girls everywhere towards greater gender equality throughout the world. I really can't thank you enough. And we are very much looking forward to share the starter kit with you online very soon, that you can all utilize. We'd love to hear from you in time if you have other ideas on this. And before we say goodbye, if that's okay, I want to share with you two things. One, please visit the Global South Women's Forum's website of Europa Asia Pacific. This is just the beginning day. We have amazing sessions going throughout the next 5 days. And please do not forget to tweet with the Global South Women's Forum 2020 GSWF 2020 hashtag. And before we go, it would make me very happy if it would be possible to open our videos and say hi and goodbye to all of us. So I can thank you personally by seeing your face, for spending these 1.5 hours with us. Would that be possible? Let me go to the gallery version. Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful to see all of you. Would it be all right if I take a quick screenshot so we can have like a group at the end of a meeting? Great, thank you. I'll just wait a couple of more minutes for everyone to open. Pooja, I believe everyone's video should be open. You shouldn't be prohibited from opening it.
No, it says I can't start my video because the host has stopped. So I think it's just right now.
I asked you to start the video.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, great. Is everyone ready? I have to take 3 pictures because we're a big group. So please bear with me while I take all the screen. So, 1, 2, 3, smile. Second one. 1, 2, 3, smile. And the last one. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you all so much. This has been a great experience, and we were so happy and excited to share the snapshot of the starter kit with all of you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for all your expertise, and hope that we can meet in more happy, healthy days ahead in 2021 and hug each other, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.
See you tonight on another